Ladies and gentlemen, the first episode of Let's Talk 20's. That is the name at the exact moment, but that probably will change. I put this out on my Instagram story a few weeks ago, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, but just kind of make a podcast with people in their 20's and kind of talk about, random stuff, what they're going through, whether it's mental health or, graduating college or really anything. Kind of just let people know that they aren't alone. And I had an overwhelming response. I got to talk with some of you guys who I really haven't, really had a full conversation with in years. And so I thought it was really cool, and definitely persuaded me to do this. So the first episode, I'm with my boy. Um, I've known Connor since high school. And how many years is that now, Connor? Probably close to 10 now.
Yeah,
That's fucking
it's
crazy.
probably 9, 10. It'll be 10 years. I think at by the no, I think it'll be 10 years next year. It's 9 years this year.
That's wild, man. I mean,
Yeah,
that's crazy, especially moving around so much. I never really kept in touch with people for that long, and I know the feeling's mutual. But you're definitely one of my best friends in general. But
yeah.
nonetheless, in high school for sure, we were really close. Um,
Thanks, man. The feeling is definitely mutual. You're one of the few people I definitely kept in contact with as consistently as you can when you change schools and go on a different life path. We always caught up on the phone. We would play video games together, and we would always have these like 2, 3, 4 hour conversations with each other just randomly. It was really nice. So thanks for thinking of me with this idea. It's a really great idea. I think people will get a lot out of it. So it's exciting, man.
yeah, I'm actually really excited. I mean, like I just said, I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I think even if it's just a few people, I mean, I only even if it's just one person that actually listens start to finish and thoroughly enjoys it, that's enough for me, man. I'm just here for the ride. But
Yeah.
Connor, I got you on this episode. It's graduation week for a lot of people. I know for my folks
Oh
down at
yes.
Auburn, they graduated this weekend, and I know a bunch of people are graduating next weekend. So you and I are kind of um, new grads in a way. I mean, this has been my first full year out of
Hmm.
college, and I know for you it's been a little bit longer. But I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of talk about post graduation and how it can be a really challenging time for people, and sometimes in a good way, and then for others, not necessarily the best transition in their life. So, um,
Yeah.
let's go and start off with high school, man. How we first met and how that all translated throughout high school.
Sure. Yeah. You want to start like when we first met, or you want like towards the end of high school, like get it into college?
Yeah, we'll start with I mean, we were we close friends my freshman and sophomore year. I don't really think we were. It was more junior and
I,
senior year.
Tanner, uh, high school, high school Connor was definitely a complicated character. His first couple of years, seeking approval, trying to fit in and find yourself among friends, thinking that certain people's opinions mattered more than others. So I don't think we were super close your freshman year, but definitely your sophomore year we got closer.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Well, you're always, I mean, you're a year older than me, so I
Hmm.
always kind of hung out with the older crowd at that point. I didn't really have too many. I mean, I had some friends in my grade, but the friend group we had, everyone was kind of older than me, so I kind of watched you guys graduate high school and figure out what the heck you guys are doing and all of that, and then you guys just abandoned me, and I was devastated.
Yeah, we really should have flunked out and stayed with you so that we could have all stuck together,
Yeah,
man.
you
I don't
you
know
should
what
have
we were
repeated
thinking.
senior year. Um, but what was your personal experience going from high school to college? Because I know you kind of stayed at a more local school to be closer to home and everything. But how was that transition for you specifically?
Um, looking back on it, my senior year of high school had a lot of ups and downs, and of course, a lot of the highs are getting to experience being like the top dog in a small pond, if you will. And the lows consisted, of course, of trying to navigate the nerve wracking process of applying to colleges and meeting all those deadlines and applications. And I remember for me trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I definitely had a lot of personal decisions that factored into my college decision. I was in a relationship that I thought was going to be more stable, so that factored into my decision. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life at that point. I was kind of just like waiting for something to come along and like grab my attention, something that like people talk about, oh, I'm so inspired and I'm going to become a musician or something, for example. So I remember just going local because I just wanted to go to college just to get the bachelor's degree. And for me, it wasn't a difficult process getting into college because I applied at an easy school. But the schools that I did apply to that were difficult, oh, I mean, I'm sure you can relate, Tanner, but yeah, it that's when it really starts to get stressful because your teachers and your parents, of course, and are all like putting these deadlines and are talking about what it means for your future, and then you see some of your friends who will get into these schools, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is real.
Yeah, for sure, man. Especially when you're still waiting to hear back from schools, and then like some of your buddies are already accepted and like hyped to go to whatever school they're planning on going to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many schools did you apply to when you
Uh,
were applying?
I did I think 3 or 4. I mean, at the time, I mean, so I initially, if you remember, was trying to go to school for a vet, like be a pre vet
I
degree. So I
remember.
was looking at like UGA and Auburn at the time, but I also applied to Tennessee UT,
Yeah,
and I got waitlisted for UGA, but I got accepted to Auburn, accepted to Tennessee. So I knew I was going to go to one of the 3 schools I really wanted to go to. Um, but then as time went by, I obviously now I'm not pre vet major. I'm exercise science, pre physical therapy, trying to transition into grad school and all that. But at the
yeah.
time, I went to Auburn to be a vet, veterinarian because they have a vet school there too. So I was gonna stay there for 7 or 8 years, and I thought I had it all planned out, and that's not true. Never works
Yeah,
that way.
it never does, man. I mean, I remember I when I first went for my freshman year, I was planning to be a music composition major because music was so big in high school with all of us, and it was always a big part of my life. So I was like, oh, this is naturally what I want to do. I looked at the prerequisites of what you needed to get into music composition, and I said, no, I'm good. So then I tried to be an actor. I
Yeah.
switched my major to acting for 2 semesters. That didn't work out either. I'm not very good at improv, and I'm not very good at not getting in my head when I'm like acting. I'm too self aware. So I remember that I switched from acting to communications, and then kind of like you said, like you try to make plans and you think that you have it figured out, and then sometimes you just find out it's not like a good fit, or sometimes you start to do the coursework and you're like, this is interesting, but it's not exactly what I had in mind when I first thought about it. And all of that has to be taken into consideration when you're in college, because it's a lot of money, it's a lot of commitment, and it's a lot of hard work, especially if you go for a degree that you really care about. So you want to make sure it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we went through those 2 3 years of college, and then senior
Oh
year
yeah.
hits for college. And
Oh
just
god.
like when you're a senior in high school, it's a huge milestone. You're trying to figure out what the hell you're gonna do with yourself. If you're gonna go to grad school, if you're gonna take a gap year, if you're just trying to get a quality job straight out the gate, or whatever you want to do. So what was that kind of building up for you? Because I can talk about my senior year, and it was a roller
Oh
coaster for
man.
sure. But
Well, I settled on going to another school. I became a, psychology major, and I
it's yeah, Fuck yeah.
All useless majors. No, not
No,
really,
they're
but
not. They're not
no, they're
useless.
not.
But
They're
you
not. I'm just
definitely
kidding.
changed. You definitely changed your major.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I definitely remember being in college and talking to a lot of people in the same situation as me. Like, they changed majors as many times, if not more, than I did, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just picking majors just so I can finish, but I don't even know what it is I want to do." And after a certain point, I just remember I had to pick something just so I could finish. And then when senior year came around and you had to think about what jobs you were going to get, if you were going to go to master's school, if that was even an option for your program, if that's something that you wanted to do, it was more nerve wracking, at least for me, because before you had like you go to school for, good lord, like if you go to college you go to school for 18 years of your life, like, and then when you think about graduating college, it's different from high school because you're not going to have school. And so then it's like there's this like part of you that's almost like taken away
Yeah.
once you shift out of that. So that was a low point. I know you said that was a tough year for you too, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I had some financial stuff. I was trying to go to a really expensive school and pay my rent and all this other stuff, and I ended up having to work. Well, I was working a full-time job and then doing like DoorDash on the side to make a little extra cash.
Oh.
So I was working probably around 60 hours a week, I'd say, and that's probably an understatement. And
Mhm.
um, here I am barely getting by, like still on the college budget. And then
Yeah.
it's like, shit, man, it's my senior year. I'm supposed to be, enjoying myself. I'm supposed to be doing this, this, and this. And some people in my grade, were living that fun lifestyle, kind of having a fun last year. And I'm over here like struggling struggling to get by and had no idea what the heck I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
Um, or where I would be, what I was doing. Especially when you work a job right before you graduate that has nothing to do with your major, and you're like, I just feel like I'm wasting my time right now.
Yeah.
Um, so it
Yeah.
was tough, and yeah, I didn't know where I was going, what I'd be doing, because I wanted to go to PT school, but then with COVID, there was just a whole bunch of requirements like observation hours I didn't do because I couldn't, and so I was kind of forced to take a gap year. And so then I moved up here
Yeah.
with my mom in Cincinnati, but it was tough, man. And it's okay to really not have it figured out because, truthfully, I mean, I'm more financially secure now. I have a roof over my head and all that, but at the same time, I still don't 100% know what I'm doing. Like, nothing is for certain at the moment. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I do think we have to, like, of course, talk about especially people who are graduating recently and who have graduated, when I graduated and you graduated. I mean, the impact that COVID-19 may have had on your education, whether you had to shift into remote classes, whether you weren't able to have a graduation ceremony. I wasn't able to have a graduation ceremony because of COVID-19. I mean, the impact of how that can affect you emotionally, there's no way to overstate like how
nah,
big that could
nah,
be
the
on people who are going through this right now.
oh, for sure, for sure. It was definitely tough, man. You the last year and a half, um, pretty much doing all online school, still paying out of state tuition for all online school.
Gosh.
And like I said, just working and then going on my computer. And like I just had very much so a lack of interaction with people that like I should have in the time. Looking back, I definitely should have, instead of being so stressed about the money and stuff, realized that I was going to make it, just keep doing what I was doing, but also like try to enjoy myself instead of being so
Yeah.
focused on, well, what resulted in, you know, just a gap year. But even if I was going to have a job set up and everything, you still got to enjoy yourself while you're still in the moment. Um,
Hmm.
and I didn't really do that much. So That was one thing I could have done more, but, what do you think was your looking back from when you were graduating into this first year post college, like, what do you think was the biggest thing you could have done differently or better, um, if you had to do it again?
Um, that's a really good question. Um, I mean, in general, I wish I had done more external activities slash internships slash volunteer things for my major than I had. Even if I didn't know if psychology was what I originally wanted to do, I'm trying to go back to school to like get my master's right now, and I remember applying to jobs. I didn't realize how big of an impact seeing or like how big of an impact companies who might look at your resume want to see stuff like that.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that it was kind of like, you know, I I think I was more naive in college, and that's totally fine. There's just a lot of the stuff you can't even really learn until you start to experience it, you know. But I remember I at a certain point, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I was just finishing to finish, you know, and I was finishing because I knew that it was better to finish than to not finish it out, even though I didn't know exactly what was going to happen afterwards. I didn't know what the future was. I just knew that I had to get this piece of paper because in a way I was almost, for me, I was told that I needed to get it by so many people. Um and it's ended up being all right, because I didn't have to have everything figured out. But one thing that I do wish that I had done more was get more involved with the major that I did end up with, because it would have made me look better as an applicant, as somebody who's now trying to get into grad school. Um, it would have made me look better, I think, in the long run.
yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that's for certain careers, it's really well, I mean, I guess most of them, to be honest. You kinda need an internship or some kind of co-op or whatever to, get your foot in the door, at least with a decent company when you're trying to, um, get out of college and into your first real job.
And
Um,
you know what's interesting? Sorry to interrupt. I
no,
just
you're
thought of
good.
something else, but to be honest, I think it's good to have any kind of volunteer experience just in general. You know, I mean, there might be like a hobby or some kind of like subject that you want to learn more about in general that might not have exactly to do with your major, but at least if you commit to that and you add that to your experience, you're showing that you're willing to like go above and beyond and do a little bit extra in that regard, um, which is going to make your application and your resume and make your experience look more marketable because you dedicated time outside of your major and your work and dedicated time to your life to pursue something that either, you know, creatively interests you or, you know, professionally interests you, whatever it may be. I It doesn't necessarily have to be related to your major. I think it helps, but I think really doing anything is helpful.
Yeah, that goes, hand in hand kinda with, something I kinda wanna touch on before we kinda go more in depth about the whole post-graduation situation. Um,
Yeah.
College, especially senior year, is crazy because, at least for me, mentally up to that point, I don't wanna say I'm working towards something to please others, but once you realize, like, once you're out of college, unless your parents want you to move back home into their place, what you're working for, like, that degree is what's propelling you into the rest of your life,
Yeah.
and you're doing it for yourself, so every time you fail an exam, you're not your parents don't care because 'cause they're not the ones that are gonna have that degree or whatever, the opportunity to get a job. So once I realized, like, I'm achieving this and I need to bust my ass to do this for myself instead of, um, not necessarily doing it for others. That's not the right choice of words, but kind
Right.
of doing it just to going through the motions versus actually like getting after it because I need to do this for myself and I have the desire to succeed. I didn't really have that like fire inside me until senior year. And unfortunately, it was kind of in a grand scheme of GPA, which mine isn't the best, but not horrendous. Um,
Hmm.
it's a little too late to do that senior year, but that was a big wake up call for me too. Is like up until senior year, I was kind of like just going through college, and then I sat down and had a real like I don't know, real realization, I guess you could say that I was like, holy shit, dude! Like once I'm out of college, and time's only going faster, it's not slowing down for me. But once I'm out of college, like I got to figure and do everything by myself. I'm not gonna have my parents or friends or my roommates or anything like
Yeah.
regardless, it's all on me. So that was something that I'm sure everyone knows that like, yeah, Tanner, no shit, you're going to college to get a piece of paper that helps you propel yourself in your professional career. But some people don't realize that. Like unless someone directly tells them like, "Hey man, you're kind of just going through it. I hope you realize that you should be doing this for yourself and your future." Um,
Yeah. Uh,
does that make sense?
that's that. No, it does make sense, and I feel like it was something that I kind of brought up earlier, and what you're talking about, where you're doing this degree and you're making these decisions to make your life better. To be completely honest with you, I don't think I learned that lesson until pretty recently, um, because something that I talked about earlier was, by the time we're 4 or 5 years old, right? That's when we start school, right? And
Yeah.
we're just doing school, like I do think that there are some people that find meaning with it, are able to be really engaged, and they learn early on, whether from their parents or from their friends or whatever, that this is for me, and this is something that is to make my life better. But I do think that I was one of those people that was just going through the motion, similarly to you as well. And it didn't click with me until after I left college that that's what it was all for. And it certainly wasn't a waste for me doing college, and it certainly wasn't a waste either for you for, you know, getting to that point in your senior year. It's not like everything up to that point was a waste, but it's definitely it's like a mindset that is, it's like a wake up call. I think you said a wake up call, right? That is the perfect description of it.
Here's what I'll say. There is a difference and fine line between being comfortable and then being complacent with where you're at.
Hmm.
And voice crack. And that was my kind of thing. I thought I was just comfortable, but I was being complacent. I had uh, just a feeling of security and stuff while, at the end of the tunnel there's this huge thing called graduating college and make it in the world that I kind of just pressed aside. It's hard to accept that for some people, hard to like accept like you're going to be an adult once you graduate and you have to do all this stuff on your own and yada yada. But I think a lot of people are not comfortable. They think that they're just comfortable but got it figured out, but in reality they're being complacent and are kind of reacting instead of anticipating what's bound to happen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right, man. I feel like I do want to point out that, like, I think that there are also people who on the outside might seem like they've got it all completely figured out. Like they've got a path, and they've got a um they've got a vision for their lives. For example, they know they're going to, what master schools they're going to get into. They know exactly how much it costs. They know exactly where they're going to be in the next couple of years, right? So like on the outside they seem like they've got it all figured out, but like, truth be told, we also don't know exactly what's going on in that person's head. It's really easy to compare yourself to, in terms of success, to how quote unquote other or successful other people are. You know what I mean? I think
Oh,
that
for
was something I
sure.
struggled with too in senior year, was seeing the benchmark and seeing where I could be,
Hmm.
and then honestly getting down on yourself because you're not at that point yet. You know what I mean?
Bro, that's huge. And that was my thing with the job that I was working. Like, I mean, I wasn't embarrassed that I worked at Kroger full time, but in the moment, I had some financial stuff come up, and I needed rent as soon as possible. So I thought of somewhere that would immediately hire me,
Hmm.
and Kroger hired me immediately. And so like I worked there for months full time, and then did the DoorDash stuff. But then,
Yeah.
I'm sitting there in my room after work and all that, just kind of sad. And then I'm going onto Instagram or something and seeing all my friends or people from wherever posting about, I'm excited to announce I'm going to Harvard University for law, or,
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah, 100% comparing yourself to others is definitely something that's easier said than done to not do. But
Oh gosh.
everyone's got their own shit, man. Everyone's going through something,
Yeah.
and I don't care what anyone says. That's 100% true. And there are some people that do have it all figured out, and everything worked out, like their plan worked to the T. And honestly, congrats to you. But 99 out of 100 times it does not go that way. Um, but yeah,
No, you're
comparing
right.
comparing yourself to others is not the best idea.
Yeah, and it's really easy to and we don't have to keep harping on this, but it's also just really easy to do that because of like how um how a lot of the schools in our country like to like publicize like these people who are making these big strides, and so you can't like help but feel like if you're not that, then like what defines success, like is that success, and if I don't meet that, then I'm not successful. So then what does that make me? You know what I mean? Then
Right.
you might get to like, at least for me, it got me to go to like, oh, then I'm a failure because I'm not a success, which is not true
Oh yeah.
at all, because there's a lot of different metrics and measures of success, and everybody's on their own path. And I know some of this sounds cliche, but it's it was a very important lesson for me to learn when I was in college, that I had to find my own path, even if I hadn't figured all of it out yet. By the time college was over, I had to figure out something to do, I guess, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, would that be and I'm gonna probably ask this question in full later, but do you think that would be your main piece of advice for people um who are graduating right now, or maybe just recently graduated like you and I? Um, is that the biggest takeaway that you would have for them at the moment?
Um, like you don't have to have everything figured out by the time you graduate.
Yeah, like just for people graduating, like what do you think is the biggest takeaway that they should understand as they're graduating or recently into the post college world? Um, what would you think is the
Um,
biggest takeaway?
oh man,
You want me to
hitting
start?
my heart, hitting my heart with all these these
Oh, come on,
deep
man! I
questions.
have to,
I
I have
love
to
it.
ask that deep questions. Do
Oh,
you want me
I
to start
know.
to give you some time to think?
Yeah, I would be curious to hear your answer, man.
All right. Well, my biggest takeaway for people who are graduating is to kind of accept the challenges that are ahead. And without getting talking for 5 minutes straight, the reason why I say that is because your whole life, even throughout college, you're living with others. You have your family, then you go to school, and then you got your friends at school, and then you're doing swim or soccer or football. You got your buddies from there. And then in college, you got your roommates, you got your, whatever club you're in, whether that's sports or, um, I don't know, drama club or whatever you decide to do. The biggest thing for me was I spent so much time around others that I, when forced to be by myself after I graduated college and moved up here and all that, was like, who am I? Like, who is Tanner when he's not around people? Like, who am I true and genuinely? How am I as a person? Or what's my personality? Or how do I actually go through these things by myself because I'm not saying you don't have a support system, but like a lot of people when they graduate college, they're moving to a new city. So the only people they may know is their significant other, maybe a family member or something. But like you have a lot of time once you're done with college and not living with your best friends anymore to like really figure out who you truly are as a person, what you believe in, how you think, your decision making, your priorities, your belief system, like all that, your morals, everything. So like that was the biggest like overwhelming thing that I had experienced. And I moved up here. Granted, I'm living at my mom's. But besides my mom and my girlfriend, dude, I didn't know anyone. I had no plan.
Mhm.
I just moved
Yeah.
up here. And so I had people to be around, but at the same time, I was really kind of isolated by myself while Cameron was um back at her school and everything. So this
Yeah.
past year I've learned so much about myself and who I am. Um I don't think a lot of people really understand that, or I guess they're about to find out, but that was the biggest thing for me, learning about myself, who I truly am, and like, you know, what things I could improve on. And it really kind of highlights your flaws and your perfections, in general, you as a person. But that's what I would say for me. Biggest takeaway: get ready to learn about yourself and embrace it, and kind of like force yourself to figure yourself out. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
That's great advice, man. I think that's like a lifelong thing that you have to figure out about yourself.
oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
never ending. It's not something you just immediately figure out, and also you'll change over time. But
Mhm. Yep.
in terms of me actually having to do that, this was definitely the most that I've gotten to learn about myself within the last, you know, year or so.
Yeah, man. That's really it's great advice because it's like when you're on your own, especially after you graduate college, you have this schedule that you follow when you're in college, and so when you're on your own, you define your own schedule, you define your own goals, and you really define your own life. And in order to do that, you need to learn how to be able to connect with yourself.
Yeah,
And it's not an easy process. I'm 2 years graduated from college, and I'm probably the most connected with myself that I've felt in probably 3 or 4 years. But it took me that long to get here of working on it on a consistent week to week basis. You know what I mean? Like it's
absolutely.
constantly working on that. That's great advice, man.
Well, thanks. You figure out what you were gonna say or no?
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about a little bit, but I think my biggest takeaway that I've learned since I've come from college, when I remember when I was in college, I talked about not being able to figure out my majors. I talked about one of the things that I wish I'd done more in college was learn about or do more extracurricular things with my major and even outside my major. And a lot of the reason why I didn't do those things and why I kept changing majors was because I was kind of waiting for that thing to like grab me and to just like have everything figured out all at once.
Right.
Um, and I thought I had to have all of that figured out after or before college was over. And I was terrified of making decisions, like wrong decisions, basically, quote unquote, wrong decisions, until I found that. But the biggest thing that I've learned since I left college is that I did not have to have all of that figured out. And I have made decisions that have not worked out since I've left college, but not a single one of them has been wrong. I I moved to Washington D.C. last year for to get out on my own and to learn to live by myself, and partially because of a relationship as well. To expand on that, and that relationship for me is now over, but that doesn't mean that it was a mistake for me to move out here. I
And you
might
moved
I
out by
might be
yourself, right? Sorry to interrupt, but just to let people know, like you moved to DC. You went from Atlanta to DC, and essentially you don't know anyone in DC except
Right.
your brother, right?
Yeah, exactly. I knew my ex-girlfriend and her family and her connections that were there, but besides them and my older brother, yeah, I didn't know anybody. Um and I remember in college, like, the thought of doing something like that freaked me out because I didn't know if it was the right place. I didn't know the job that I was going to get, and I wanted all of it to be quote unquote the right decision. But there is so much time after college that I'm realizing, and it doesn't matter when you graduate. You could graduate when you're 22, when you're when you're 40, when you're 50 even, it doesn't matter how old you are. There's still time, and there's still a lot of decisions that you have time to figure out. You don't have to feel pressure to figure every single thing out, because a lot of the times, I mean, there's so many people who get a degree in something in college and they have a completely different career 10 years later. You know what I mean? Like, they take a completely different path with their lives.
Oh yeah.
And I think having some kind of direction is a good thing, but don't wait for the right decision, quote unquote. It's good to just try to take a step forward, even if that ends up not being the path that you take, at least it's a step forward.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there because there's several different branches of conversation within what you just said. Um, first, the first thing that kind of popped out to me that you said is that, um, you're trying to find a thing that was it for you, like your calling.
Right.
Um, and I know for a fact that there are going to be people who are graduating right now that, like you said, within 10 years will not have a job that is applicable to their major. Or I know people that got this degree at college just because they thought it would be something easy or something that you could do in
Right.
different ways or whatever. But to s- to clarify, just because you have a major and all of that doesn't mean that that is what you're going to do, and it's okay to feel like you don't know what the heck you're going to do with this degree, because sometimes you're not going to use it anyways, and that's not a bad thing.
Hmm.
So that was the first thing that popped out to me, so like to kind of let people know that it's okay to feel like you don't know what you're going to do with that degree, or if you're getting a job that doesn't have to do with that degree. It happens more times than people realize.
Absolutely.
um the second big thing that popped out to me was the whole don't wait for that thing to pop out at you. Like you said, you're kind of waiting for something and you didn't know if moving to DC was the right thing for you.
Yeah, and you kind of talked about. I wanted to harp back on, like, the whole comfortable and complacent thing.
Yeah.
Like, for me, like, I was waiting, and I've been complacent because I
Yeah.
was waiting too long, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. 100%. And that was the other thing the second thing I wanted to touch on was that, um there's a lot of times where things come up and you're going to be uncomfortable, but you have to take those leaps to kind of figure something out. Who knows? Maybe you move to DC and you and your ex didn't work out, but maybe there's someone in DC that will eventually be your one, or a
Mhm.
great job opportunity that works out in DC and that blossoms into some, like, everything happens for a reason, in my opinion. And um sometimes you have to take that risk and kind of be uncomfortable. You don't need to always live in this box. It's okay to kind of branch out and take a risk. And if it doesn't work out, well, you know what? At least you tried.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I have a question for you, actually.
Okay.
Would you say that that kind of, I didn't know, for example, moving to DC, if that was the right decision for me, but I at least, like, needed to feel like I needed to feel like I needed to take that step, because I needed to do something. Would you say that you experienced something similar, like when you moved back home up there to be with your mom and, like, closer to Cam and all that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say so. I was kind of torn because I could either stay in Auburn. At the time, my roommates were all a year younger, so actually, I was apartment hunting with them my senior year because I didn't even know if I was going to stay or not up until about
Mhm.
literally probably a month and a half or a month before I graduated. So I was like, maybe I'll stay at Auburn for next year, trying to get my shit together. But the meantime, I can be with my friends. And then I was thinking about moving to Atlanta, uh, being closer to my dad. But then I
Mhm.
also felt like, um, then I'm putting myself in a position where um, I'm not closer to Cameron. And just like you made the leap with your now ex girlfriend, I've been dating Cam long distance for 2 years at that point,
Right.
over 8 hours. So I was like, I might as well move up to my mom's, um, live there, or at least live around there. But I ended up moving into my mom's house and be closer to Cameron. So yeah, I mean, I took that risk. And even, whether I was in Atlanta or here, both Cincinnati and Atlanta are both huge cities. So there was going to
Mhm.
be an opportunity for work or whatever it was, regardless. But yeah, I
And
definitely moved up here
yeah, yeah,
and
I agree,
didn't know
man.
anyone. So just like you.
Well, I was gonna bring something up that you brought up. Sorry to interrupt. It was about your decision maybe to go to Atlanta as well. I know that that was one of the things that you were thinking about, as well as even Auburn too. I mean, I'm sure people might be wondering, like, with where you are now and how you've made a lot of progress with yourself. It's like it almost seems like moving up to Cincinnati was quote unquote ended up being the right decision, because of how things are now afterwards. But to be completely honest with you, had you gone to Atlanta or you had stayed in Auburn, you touched on this too. They're all really big cities. You could have had a very similar outcome in those cities regardless, but you just made the best decision that you could make at that moment that you felt was right, and that's all you can do. You
Right.
just made whatever decision that, based on your life circumstances, based on what you felt was the right direction. You just had to go with something, and that who knows what would
Oh,
have ended up happening if you had moved to any of those other places. But you did make a decision, and it ended up working out in a lot of ways. Even though it has been tough, like there was no way to know, quote unquote, what the right decision was, because really there wasn't a right
nah, there
decision.
there isn't a right decision for sure, man.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't a right decision. I'm picking up what you're getting at here. I'll also say at the same time, I know people who, um, and there's nothing wrong with this, and whether it'll work out or you'll regret it later on. At least you still learned that a lot of people will move back to their hometown,
Oh yeah.
or a lot of people will still make your decision post graduation based on whether it's your parents or I'm not going to get into relationships because that would be controversial, but their parents or outside relationships with others
Hmm.
to influence your decision. But my thing is, at the same time, at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself, numero uno,
Yeah.
um, and do what is best for you in that moment. And even if you think, that's really risky, and you don't know if it's going to work out well, you could not take that opportunity and then look back a few months later and be like, shit, I should have done that. But I know a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Once again, I want to clarify that if other people, including your family, is trying to guide you or maybe help you out what they think and you think is best for you, that could 100% be the case. But for me personally, um, you kind of have to take what some would say is a selfish approach to after college or even in general. But you kind of have to take care of yourself first. So yeah, I took the decision that I thought would be best for me personally.
Hmm.
Um, and not saying that staying in Auburn or moving in with my dad would have been a bad option. They could have been just as equally rewarding. But
Yeah.
um, I don't know. Would you agree with me on that statement? Because I know some people won't, and they'll take that the wrong way, possibly of um, me telling you to break up with your girlfriend instead of moving to Colorado with her. That's not what I'm getting at. But I know
Yeah.
sometimes people come at a crossroads of either trying to please others still and like stay at home, or decide to move to a random city and like do this whole adventure, solo and all. I would say do the adventure solo. Would you agree with that, or are you kind of back and forth? And
I
I'm different
think
because I moved around a bunch, and you stay in Atlanta your whole life, so we may have different perspectives.
I wanted to touch on two things. The first thing I wanted to touch on, so I don't forget it, before I answer your question, is you talked about when you're making a decision like that, if your family or an outside relationship is a factor in the decision, you have to act. I think you said selfishly, but what's funny to me is that as I've been on my own for a little bit now, I'm starting to realize that there's a difference between acting in your own self interest and then acting selfishly, and there is something to be said about learning what the difference is, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with acting in your own self-interest. There's definitely nothing wrong with that, because you do have to learn how to do that. I agree with your statement of you have to look out for yourself, numero uno, like you said, because at the end of the day, this is your life. This is not somebody else's life that you're going to live for, and whatever other people may think that you need to do. It's good to get advice from other people. You shouldn't just completely just be stuck in your own head, and you want to hear other people's perspectives because that's wise. However, if you're so influenced by what other people say about you and what you should do, that makes it really difficult to act in your own self-interest, because there is going to be a point in your life, at least I feel, where that's going to catch up to you, and you're going to have to understand enough about yourself to make difficult decisions. And if you don't learn how to act in your own self-interest, it's hard to make those difficult decisions. Like right now, I'm here on my own, and I'm trying to get into grad school, and I am never been on my own, and I'm so used to being around my friends and family, and I have to make a lot of difficult decisions about my future, but I'm not making them selfishly. It's just about what is the best decision that I can make right now for me. So I do think that there's a difference, and I'm not going to educate people here and say that I still know the complete difference, because I don't yet, but I'm learning it, and it's an important thing to start to learn. But to answer your other question, I don't know if that point came across well. Hopefully that made sense what I was trying to say. Um,
No, 100% did. Thank you for digging me out of my own hole because I was trying. I didn't have that. That's a great line there. Being selfish versus your self interest, because that is a really good point there.
well, thank you. But what was I going to say? But to answer your question, I'm of the opinion that if you can make a decision like that and know how to act in your own self-interest, even if that means that you might go like move in with that person in a relationship or whatnot, then it's kind of tough, because I don't know if I could say one way or the other, because I think people are different. I think for me, I'm really influenced by what other people think of me, whereas others may know how to act in other people in their own self-interest. They've been doing it their whole life, for example, so that's never been a concern for them. So maybe taking in other people's input is really important, and they need to do that more. You know what I mean? So I would lean towards your perspective, but I think it kind of depends on whatever that person's situation is at the time. So I'm giving a very boring, nonpartisan answer.
Boo.
I'm sorry, man.
Be
I will
controversial
lean
off the
towards your
gate.
perspective.
Nah,
What'd
man.
you say?
I was just fucking with you. No,
Hey, man.
that's legit. That is I mean, that's huge. That is huge. That's a huge lesson that I'm still working on, being selfish versus self-interest, because I'm a people pleaser as well, Not that I
Hmm.
need everyone to like me, but especially for the people that I love, I want to make them proud
Yeah.
and, you know, kind of please them. I got, screw it, I'll say it. Yeah, I'm trying to please them, trying to make them happy and make them proud of me. So,
Hmm.
um
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, too. It's
no,
just like, at what point are you a people pleaser at the sacrifice of your own well being? And that's a
bam.
very that is a hard thing to learn. That even I, I have not learned it. I've talked to people at my job, at, that in my family, that have not learned it. It is a constant thing for sure. But I still think it's good to be a people pleaser at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're dropping these knowledge gold nuggets right here, man. I'm loving it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Tanner. I'm only as good as my host is. So
Ah, awesome, man. Well, to follow up with everything we've talked about so far,
yeah.
um, we kind of I don't want to say we talked negatively in regards to like, hey, here's what you should expect post graduation, blah blah blah. Drop on this heavy shit on them. But what do you think is something that people should be excited or stuff to look forward to
You know,
with this next stage?
man, that's what man. You say I'm dropping these knowledge nuggets, but you're dropping these really, really like targeted, deep, poised questions. My goodness, if you haven't ever considered going into psychology or being a therapist, you should, man. You hit it hard.
Scratch everything I've said. I'm switching majors and going back to school right now.
Oh my gosh, guys, Tanner's gonna go back into undergrad and then just like repeat all the same things that he went through.
With the same
um,
knowledge I have now, with the knowledge, I'll be unstoppable.
yeah, we're gonna go through the same problems. Oh, God. I would say, um, one thing that you can look forward to, even though it's kind of daunting in a way, is how much freedom that you have with yourself after you graduate, especially if you don't go back to school. It might be different for people who go into graduate school because you're still kind of continuing that path. But I do remember when I graduated, part of me was just like, I just need a break from school, you know? And one thing that has been really great is the consistency of my job and the consistency of my schedule, and that I get a constant paycheck. I know what to expect. And even though it's boring sometimes, it's nice that it's not like hectic trying to finish an assignment one week and like hectic like studying for like three tests at once because all your professors were assholes and decided to schedule everything on one week. Like it's nice to have something very consistent and in a way monotonous. It makes it easier to deal with in some ways, but then there's a whole nother thing that you have to learn as well, but I can get into that another time. But yeah, I would say being able to chart your own schedule and having a consistent schedule, especially if you get a 8 to 5 job or 9 to 5 job, is really nice.
Yeah, I would say that's a great thing. Um, Having a schedule is good. I mean, you have a schedule in college to a degree, but when you have a job and you don't have to focus about exams, you don't have to focus about all the other stuff that is tied with college, and just focus on really you and your career. And I guess if if you have a spouse, all of that, and there's more adult stuff to it, paying for
Yeah.
insurance, mortgages, but at the same time, you don't have the exams and stuff. It's more routine.
Yeah,
At least I would say.
also, I have to interject real quick. Hopefully you weren't making a point. If please, please, everybody whoever may listen to this, please start your 401k very early. Please start it. I'm in human resources. I cannot stress that enough. It is you could donate $2 a week into it if you really, or $5 a week if you needed to. I promise it's very helpful to do that.
I feel like that was a I feel like that was a plug, and
Okay,
kind of offended you did that.
I'm
Um,
sorry. I do work at Fidelity, guys. If you guys want to look me up, my profile's on LinkedIn. I can
I'm
get
cutting
you.
it. I'm cutting it. I'm cutting it. I'm cutting it.
Oh
Oh my
no,
god. No, no,
no,
I
no.
agree with that point, man.
Yeah,
That's very true. Very
yeah.
true.
A shameless plug. Anyways, continue with what you were saying.
I honestly forgot what I was saying. Clearly, it wasn't that important.
Oh no, that was my fault.
No, you're chilling,
Yeah,
bro.
but what would you say is something that people can look forward to after they graduate?
Um, I mean, kind of what I said earlier. I think it's really exciting to get to know who you are, and like you also said, have the freedom in a way to kind of you could travel. Like I see a bunch of people um, that I know on Instagram and stuff. They're traveling the world. I think that's freaking awesome. I think having the
Yeah,
ability to do that kind of stuff. I think learning about yourself is cool. Um, I don't know.
yeah,
That's probably about it in terms of what I think is the best, the thing to look most forward to. It's kind of having that freedom.
yeah. It's very refreshing. I mean, because you know we've talked about it a bunch, but you're just I don't think I realized how guided I was from school with that consistent schedule and those consistent assignments that when all of that is gone, it's like it's a really nice relief for a little bit because you really are just you're just here doing your job and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm just working and doing my thing. Like this is great. You know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like it's awesome in a lot of ways."
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. You don't have people aren't necessarily. I mean, whether you want to admit or not, people are kind of controlling your life schedule up until after college. You know,
Oh
even in
yeah.
college, you have your classes and stuff, and people may think that, oh, it's only 18 hours a week or whatever. But, then you got your homework and stuff. They're kind of controlling most of your time, or at least a majority of it, I
Oh
would
yeah.
say. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Anything else any other things about post graduation or anything like that you think you want to add?
Um
Or you have any questions for me that you thought of?
I I had something. Do you think that it is important to have something like a hobby or something consistent that you do once you graduate college that's not like your work, basically?
I would say yes. It's really easy to hyper focus on your career because
Yeah.
if you think about it, with school, although even through college, obviously you're so focused on your grades and trying to succeed and get all this stuff together. So we're kind of I don't want to say trained, but we're kind of like taught to hyper focus on something and
Hmm.
make that our priority. And
Yeah.
that's why there's workaholics and all that, because I partly think it's because we put such a deep emphasis on school and all that. So then people don't have school anymore. So they're like, oh my God, well, the only thing they're really doing is work. And so then they hyper
Oh
focus on
yeah.
work, and then that becomes unhealthy. You don't need to, you need to have the work life balance.
Oh
So
yeah.
a good way,
Absolutely.
a good way is having an outlet. I would agree, whether it's, I mean, anything. I don't need to tell you what to do, but definitely
Hmm.
having an outlet is definitely important, even if it's just going to the gym or something, so you're not constantly in the cycle of, you said, yeah, it was monotonous, but and that's cool, but also at the same time you got to have that little something that's not just work related.
What that was a really good point that you made about people who become workaholics. I think that there is definitely a huge correlation with that, with people who decide to make their whole lives like one or two jobs that they have and that's it, and then maybe their families. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
No.
If that's what you want to do and you enjoy that and you like doing that. I knew plenty of people in restaurants, even people at my job now that do that, and they're very happy people. They have families, they have kids, they do stuff outside of work, they go on vacations, you know, they're happy. So not trying to take that away, but I do think, sorry, that was just that was I never even thought about that link with workaholics and people and how it comes from school in the first place. I think you're absolutely right. That's a really profound connection.
Well, thanks, man. I just came up with that on the spot. Not really. It's been something I thought about, honestly, for myself recently, because I feel like all I am doing is work, and that's for a bigger goal for grad school and all that. But at the same time, everyone struggles with it, and I really think, like I said previously, it's just because we're kind of taught to hyper focus on school and stuff. So then school's out of the question, and a lot of people, hyper focus on work, and to each
They
their
just
own.
pivot it. They just
Yeah,
like pivot that hyper focus. Yeah,
yeah. To each
absolutely.
to each their own, like you said. And I hope I don't get canceled. Episode one. There's nothing wrong with being very work driven and wanting to be the best at what you do, um, as you should. Right, that's the goal. You don't want to just half ass your job, but
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with having that um, work ethic and kind of having your job and career as your priority. But
Yeah,
there's also an extreme, you know.
absolutely, man. There's an extreme. It's really easy to fall into that pattern, and for your own mental health, I would say, at least for me, I don't think I could be a workaholic because I would need to take a step back for my own sanity. But maybe that helps some people's sanity to be that so focused on something. So, um, other than that, yeah, I would harp on the hobby thing as well. I play bass guitar on the side. I'm just kind of like learning songs that I like to play, and learning a lot of different techniques, and that is a really good outlet for me to connect with myself. And Tanner's been harping a lot about learning you learn how to connect with yourself in a lot of ways um, once you graduate college. And for me, that was a really easy way to connect with myself. Maybe not, maybe easy is the wrong word, but that was a good way for me to connect with myself, is finding something that I could consistently do and I
Hmm.
could consistently like measure my achievement with. Like, oh, I learned this song and that's really hard. So now I feel accomplished because I'm doing it for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I know Tanner just got a whole nice big setup, but I'm not going to plug Tanner unless he wants me to. So,
Oh god.
anyways, yeah, I would say that's the only other thing I would advise. If there's anything you've ever wanted to learn in your life, you'll have the time to do it, and I would force yourself if you can and have the time and energy to do it, to make it a priority because it will
Oh.
become important.
And time's only getting faster and faster, man. I mean,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? The longer you wait, and if you've been wanting to do something, you just need to do it. There's not going to be a perfect time or anything, and that's for anything that you want to do, any hobby or career or whatever, cuz you're only going to get older, and there's going to be less opportunity for you to do it. So that would to add on to your point, that's what I would
yeah.
say.
I feel
Um
like we could talk about all this stuff for like hours and hours and
Oh,
hours.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we're at a good point, man. I think we kinda touched a lot of bases.
Hmm.
Some people maybe only find, like, 2 minutes of this useful, and other people may find the whole where we at? Little over an hour, useful.
Yeah,
So, if you listen to this point, I greatly appreciate it. I'm gonna probably post this, make a YouTube channel, and, like, link it on my socials to get some people to listen to. But please, text me, DM me, whatever, give advice, what we can do better, and all that. But even if you liked it or disliked it, let me know for sure. I'm just doing this for fun. Whoever wants to listen to the episodes can. But I think it's been great, Connor. You've been a great first guest. I don't know who I'm gonna have next, but I really appreciate you coming on, man, and being open and honest. And as usual, you and I have some pretty good convos. So
absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. I don't know anybody who's going to be listening to this as well. I would love to hear people's stories as well, just like Tanner likes to hear people's stories too. So if you're interested in connecting as well, I'd love to connect, here what you're going through as well. And I'll happily give Tanner my socials for that as well. I'm excited to hear what you're going to do with this, Tanner. I think it's a really, really positive and really beneficial thing for people. It's a great idea. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
absolutely, brother. I think it's cool. Like, even if there's, shout out to the two of you that are going to listen to this. Um, no, but whoever does listen, just let me know for
Absolutely.
real, for real. I'll link you, Connor, I guess,
Yeah, I'll give you
to it
my
as well.
socials afterwards. I need to make an Instagram now so I
You need
can
to make an
connect with
Instagram.
people.
Don't act like you're that fucking old, okay? You should have an Instagram.
I don't like social media. I'm sorry, man.
There's gonna
Okay,
be
like
some girl once I link your Instagram. They're gonna be like, "Who's that hunk over there?" That you had on your first
that's
episode.
Tanner. Tanner, she's gonna get Tanner.
I'm sorry.
Stop
We're
saying
getting
that to
we're,
me.
we're getting off
We're
track.
getting ahead of ourselves.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Thank you so much for listening, guys. For now, it is called the Let's Talk 20's podcast, and hope to see you guys soon. Peace.
All right, bye guys.